Hello and welcome to another edition of No Nonsense with Pamela Wallin. Well, all the rage south of the border, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, everybody thinking that they have the answer for how we can make government more efficient and, of course, cheaper in the process. Turns out we have one of the world's leading thinkers on this whole topic of government. What does government really mean? What is it supposed to do? How has it changed? Well, Donald Savoie lives right here in Canada. He's written about 30 books on the topic, the latest of which is entitled Speaking Truth to Canadians About Their Public Service, but it's a long list. Donald is the Canadian Research Chair in Public Administration and Governments and the Clement Cormier Research Chair in Economic Development at the University of Moncton. He has literally, as I said, put his brain to work on this for his entire academic and professional life. It's so good to see you. How are you?
I am very well, and thank you for having me, Pamela, and thank you for those kind words.
Well, it's true. You really are the person who has given more thought to this than anybody that I'm aware of. So, speaking truth to Canadians about this very issue, what would you say? What would you say? Because trust in government is so key now, and it's at the lowest ebb in the longest time.
I would say two things. One, public service is a very important institution. We need it. It does all kinds of services. It provides services of all kinds and all manner and all over Canada, and we need it. Two, the public service has serious challenges, has serious problems.
Yeah.
Every day in the Globe and Mail or in La Presse, there's always a problem. Either Arrive Canada, either IT procurement. There's hardly a day that goes by without somebody saying there's something wrong here. I think Canadians as well, when you have a public service with a wage bill of $60 billion, $15 billion goes to consultants, you have 368,000 federal public servants. Canadians in their hearts of hearts know that it's not right. They're not getting good value for the kind of money that they pour in. So, A, it's terribly important. B, there are some serious, serious challenges. And I think we need to attend to those challenges because we don't want this institution to really start to unravel. Other than somebody who works for public sector union or somebody who works in Ottawa, they may think that all is well. Well, Canadians don't think that all is well. That's true.
And I think, Donald, the issue that certainly I hear from people on a daily basis is, and they say all of those things you just said, there's a scandal a day and it all costs too much and governments spend too much money, but the public servants aren't even going to work. 35% of the people here in the nation's capital and environs work from home, and nobody's convinced they're actually working from home.
That's a valid point, Pamela, because if you're a Canadian working out of a small town or Toronto, and you go to work every day, and you see the kind of benefits that federal public servants enjoy, and you clock in all the hours, and you don't have the golden pension plan and all that, and yet you can claim that you don't need to go to work, that you can do the work at home, which goes against the most basic of management principle, because managers should decide where their employees work. Right. And it seems to be something to be bargained for. Well, a lot of Canadians can't bargain that. They have to go to work. So it's becoming very difficult. And I think, seriously, that's why I wrote the book. I think the public service is playing with fire here because you can only push so much and you're going to have some kind of reaction. And so there's a couple of ways that you can do this. You can go like the Americans are going to do is put a wrecking ball to it. Well, that's what I think.
I agree totally.
And so that's one possibility. And if the public service and if the federal government is not careful, I think we may be looking at some kind of wrecking ball down the road, because too many Canadians are not happy with the situation. Or you can do it in a more deliberate, thoughtful way. It's one or the other. The status quo is not going to hang around that long. And I think public sector unions and the federal public service got to come to terms with that.
In this current government, the Trudeau government, the size of the public sector The number of public servants has increased by 42%. Can you think of any justification for that as to how or why that would happen?
No, I cannot. And I dare anybody to come up with a reason why we've grown so much. We have 300 organizations. The federal government has 300 organizations. Surely somebody can sit back and say, can we merge some of these? Can we make sense of this? Surely, but it's not happening. And I think, frankly, I don't want to be dramatic about this, but I think a day of reckoning is going to happen at some point.
Yeah.
When I made the comment about a wrecking ball, don't dismiss it, because the level of frustration may be at the point where politicians will run on this issue and win.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're seeing stateside. I mean, everyone is actually enthusiastic about this, even if they don't like Donald Trump or don't like Elon Musk or whatever it is. It seems to be a point they can agree on. But there's also a question of expectations. So I want to kind of go on the other side, this notion that you could, on the state side, take trillions of dollars out of a governing system. Do you think that's possible? We would be a percentage of that by, like a 10% figure of it.
Yeah, we would say we will cut, I don't know, $100 billion from the federal budget. It's that doable. It is doable. Is it going to be painful? It's going to be extremely painful.
Yeah.
Is it the right approach? Not at all certain. I think there's a better way of doing it. I think the level of frustration, and I think you're right, Pamela. I tell people, leave aside Donald Trump. Let's not talk about him. Let's talk about the message that he brought. And the message that he brought and Americans bought in is that there's something wrong with government. There's something that needs to be fixed. And I'm the person that's going to fix it. That's the message. And I think if you focus on the message and from there you go about and say, what can we do to make it better? That's the solution.
Let me quote to you, I just read this yesterday. Milton Friedman, who would be a big believer, of course, in DOGE and cutting even full-on departments. One of the greatest mistakes is to judge policies and programs by their intentions rather than their results. And it seems that's what we do.
He's absolutely correct. We've poured millions and millions and millions every year into evaluating program. It's amounted to nothing. It's just, it's people kept busy turning a crank that's not attached to anything. That's what it is. And so, when you launch a program and you have these kinds of intentions, nobody's going to sort of disagree with it. It's what we do with the program. It's how we implement it or don't implement it. That's the issue. And that's why things start to fall apart.
Well, I think it was one of the issues, interestingly, about the carbon tax, which is we're going to collect a tax, then we're going to give it back to you because it's supposed to be revenue neutral, but you don't feel like you're getting it all back and there's no impact on the environment. So it just seems like one big make-work project.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Roman Catholic Church, of which I was a member. Give us money, give us your prayers, and you'll see the benefits when you die. It's something like that.
You're not going to see it directly. So, okay, let's see if we can drill in a little bit because the numbers are staggering, and we've touched on some of the big issues, but the efficiency of government, and when people can't get their passports or nobody answers their phone, or we see the immigration crisis that's unfolding, whatever it may be, it goes directly to the heart of trust. So where can you start making some important, significant moves that would also help build the trust back, or at least not diminish it further?
I love that question, Pamela. And here's why. Canadians, when they deal with the federal government, the federal public service, they deal at point of contact. They deal when they apply for a passport, when they apply for old age pension. That's the extent to which they deal with the federal government. It's not an Ottawa process where everything turns around Ottawa. It's Canadians looking for service.
Yeah.
Now, Not that long ago, 75% of federal public servants worked in the regions.
Yeah.
75% worked in the regions. Today, we're getting closer to 50-50. So 50%, yes, we're getting closer to the 50.
So they're bringing it back
To Ottawa. They're bringing it to Ottawa.
Oh.
Now, if you compare with, say, Britain, Australia, and the Americans, France, about 20% of their public servants work in the national capital. People are outside. In Canada, we do the direct opposite. 50% of our federal public servants work in the national capital region. Now, the point of service suffers. That's why in the book I talk about poets and plumbers.
Yeah.
Poets are the ones that work out of Ottawa on policy, evaluation, process, coordination, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't make sense to Canadians. They don't grasp that. Officers of Parliament, we now have 10, 11. They demand a lot of work. Public servants run around producing reports. Canadians don't understand that. They don't see any benefits. Where Canadians see benefits is the point of contact when they apply for something. And if the phone is not answered, if they don't get an answer to their application in a month, they get frustrated. That's where the element of trust, really comes in. And so you're right. You're right. I think the problem, we need to turn it around and have more people at point of services and less people in Ottawa running around doing policy evaluation work.
Yeah, and even the amount they've spent on consultants, and then of course we discover that there's a whole lot of fraud built into that as well. I mean, even with this green slush fund, the battle that's going on in Parliament about producing papers, it goes actually to the heart of what a federal government should do. So part of the message in the US was, get out of our lives. Don't muck around in all the stuff. Do the big picture. We want you to make sure the roads work and we've got enough people to go to jobs. Like, really limit and focus what you do and stay out of trying to manipulate social and cultural circumstances.
That's a valid point. And I would only add to that, when you get into our lives, be a bit more efficient. Get things, Get things done. I think that's where Canadians are.
Yeah, just deliver something. Where would you start? Like, if you had the magic wand, I mean, as I've said to everybody here, you've spent your whole life thinking about this. What would be the first 2 or 3 things that you could look at to say, let's take the mini wrecking ball to those and get it done?
Okay. 35 years ago, the federal government said, we have a problem. We have 2,800 executives, managers. It's too much. We're going to cut it back. And if we cut it back, we're going to make government much more efficient. We're going to improve morale. We're going to empower frontline people. That was 2,800. It was a deliberate statement to cut it back. Stephen Harper launched a program review in 2011, said, my God, it's gone to 7,000. So we didn't put it in reverse, we put it fast forward. I got to cut it back. So he announced a program to cut back the level of executive or management levels. Today we're at 9,500. So if you're asking me where to start, there are far too many senior executive associate positions, associate deputy minister, associate assistant deputy ministers, director general, directors, managers. There's to delayer, improve morale, empower frontline workers. You don't need that many layers. You don't need 9,500 senior executives. You do not. I would start with that.
And the bill, I just want to, because I was just reading this the other day. So spending on federal bureaucrats is now at $67.4 billion. That's a 68% increase in the cost since 2016. Total size of the bureaucracy grown by 42%. Here's the other question I want to ask you about. 90% of federal executives, this group that you're talking about, gets a bonus every year. The average bonus was about $18,000. Now, everybody went crazy when they saw bonuses being given to the CBC executives because their viewership is actually going down and going down quite dramatically. So what are these bonuses based on? What are we rewarding in the public service that needs, as you say, all these executive level decision makers, but also a bonus system?
Well, I don't want to be funny here, but it's like people marking their own exams. Um,
Exactly.
a report card that they write and say, I've done a good job, so I need a bonus. It's not too far off.
Yeah.
And so it's called a performance bonus. But if you look, and there's been some, some data on this or some research, 90 some percent of executives get bonuses.
Yeah.
So it means that over 90% of executives are outperforming what they're expected or the level of expectations. That's extremely high. And so it's become standard fare. They get a bonus. Should we look at that? Absolutely.
So how would you go in, like delayering, if without sort of spending the next 30 years, saying, oh, well, I'm going to talk to Joe and Pete and Susie, all of whom are assistant deputy ministers, and try and figure out which one's smartest. How do you go in and actually do it on a technical basis? Like, do you just say, look, everybody below one deputy minister and one ADM, we take a look at all of those, take them out? Like, where do you start?
You can start in two ways. You can say there'll be no more associate positions. That will eliminate a fair bit. Second, we're going to eliminate a management level. So you're not going to have directors general. You're going to have directors, assistant deputy. You're going to whole level could be frozen out. You could do that. I think the issue that you're also asking is, how are we going to go about doing it?
Yeah.
There are only two people that can do it when it boils down: the prime minister and the clerk of the Privy Council. And so growth grows by stealth. If you're the prime minister and if you're the clerk of the Privy Council, when you go to work in the morning, there's always 20 issues waiting for you.
Yeah.
All of them urgent. All of them urgent. And if you're the prime minister, do you want to take on the public service? Because every day people take you on. So
yeah,
he or she will view the public service as an ally, as part of the team. Do you want to deconstruct a team? So I think if we're hoping for the prime minister or the clerk to take this and run with it, it's hoping against hope, because they just won't have the time, the interest to really get into it. And so that's why I suggested a Royal Commission. And I hasten to add, I'm not a big fan. I've been involved with a few Royal Commissions.
Yep.
They're very expensive. They go off in tangents. You don't know where they're going to end or where they're going. But I think we need a process. We need Canadians to have a window into the public service so they can see in, and public servants need a window to see out.
But could we do something, because I know it's a different political culture, but could you do an Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, and get two business guys from the outside world, or two business people, and say, look, come in here and give us your take and separate it, because no politician, as you say, wants to alienate the public service, because they're going to get punished when they go out to present a policy that makes no sense, that somebody drafted for them.
It can be done, Pamela. I would just add one thing. I would say a two-person team. I would ask a former senior federal public servant and a senior executive from the private sector. I think you need a combination of both. You cannot have two former senior federal public servants, because they would be looking at the problems through the same lenses. Right. But if you team up a private sector executive and a former, so that the former public servants can tell the private sector executive, look, that's how it works. That's how we can make it happen. I think it would be a good solution.
Yeah, and bring the private sector person who may not understand the nuance of government.
Yes, and I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
They come in with easy solutions.
The other thing and I may come back to that one, because I really think you could lay out a roadmap for us. But also, I just want to talk a little bit about what is happening in government. Every time there's a problem, a political problem, there's a story in the newspaper somewhere, the government announces consultants to look at it, a new committee to look at it, a new program to throw money at it. And it just keeps growing. Politicians want to be loved and they want to get reelected. How do you stop politicians from rewarding, or some say bribing, the public with their own money to win favor. Their job is to stay elected.
The only way you're going to fix that problem is for Canadians to say enough is enough. That's the only way you're going to, and politicians will hear that. They'll hear that message. Unless we get there. That's why I wrote Speaking Truth to Canadians.
Yeah.
What happened sort of the border in November, so the election, you can say all you want about Donald Trump. We'll leave that one aside. There was an important message there about government. And Americans spoke very clearly.
Yes, they did.
Canadians may well reach the point where they're going to speak very clearly in this message. I talk to a lot of people, and I hear the frustrations about the size of government, the inability to get through when they want to talk to a federal government department, the lack of good services. I think Canadians are getting very frustrated. When politicians go door to door, knock on door, they will hear an earful of what's wrong. That may bring about change.
Yeah.
I don't think change is going to come from within.
Yeah, it's got to come from without. Now, in your book, and I read this, and it sort of took me aback because it's so not what happens in Ottawa. You say the role of Parliament is to hold governments to account, but no one, including parliamentarians themselves, is making the case that Parliament is able to hold government to account when it comes to public spending or assessing the size of the public service. And I thought, exactly. I mean, this is the problem. These are the people that are supposed to be holding government to account. But as you know, in this country, with a majority government or with one that is acts as one because they're supported by another party, why would they do this?
Well, precisely. Look, Pamela, you're a senator. You've seen how the process. Yep. If you're a member of Parliament, just elected, a lawyer, a business, former teacher, whatever, from, say, Grand Falls, New Brunswick, you arrive in Ottawa, you're not equipped to ask the right questions to the right person at the right time. You're just not. And so I'm a student of government. I've studied government for a long time. When I look at the estimates, part 1, 2, and 3, very confusing. It's very confusing. And if it's very confusing for me, imagine what it's like for a member of Parliament that just arrives into Ottawa. I think the federal government needs to simplify things, needs to be much more forthcoming, needs to talk to MPs at the level that MPs talk. They need to connect. I don't think, I know, because I know a lot of MPs and they talk to me, they have no sense of the size of government. I mean, and it's happened in the past where the estimates process forgot to add 5 or 6 pages on a key program. Nobody noticed.
Yeah.
Nobody noticed. I mean, if you can get away with that kind of stuff, what can you get away with? And so I think the transparency of the estimates process, of being able to hold government to account on the size of government and so on, it's got to be a lot more accessible. It is not at the moment. MPs it's like grabbing smoke. If they try to grab the estimates process, they're grabbing smoke. They're not grabbing real things.
But really part of that, and I know you'll have thoughts on this, 2 questions, which is the whole accountability issue, because the whole Westminster model, where ministers are accountable, ministerial responsibility. If something goes wrong in their department, they used to resign or say they were sorry. None of that goes on anymore. And the other thing that has grown dramatically, and this speaks right to your point about the inability of anybody, including members of Parliament, to figure out what's in a piece of legislation, is the Omnibus Bill process, which they're using with their budgets now. And so you've got a budget, and then you throw everything, including the kitchen sink, in there that you couldn't get passed in some other way, or that you're in a hurry to do, or even more troubling, that you're trying to hide.
Yes, interesting you would raise that, Pamela, because every opposition leader going back 30 years, every single one of them, including the current prime minister, has made a clear commitment. Once elected, we will not use that bill in the estimates process. We will not, because it lacks transparency. It dilutes accountability. Every single one of them.
Yep.
Yet A month or two after, then there's, oh, no, we're not going to change that. That's pretty convenient. Yeah. So unless Canadians ask leaders of oppositions, political parties, so look, we need to do away with this because in the interest of transparency, we need to do it better. It's not going to happen because they have no internal reasons to change it.
Well, and I'm thinking about if and when the election comes in this country, and if the polls are right, so I'll put all the caveats in. And Pierre Poilievre becomes the prime minister in Canada, he is going to be in the same bind. If he wants to put his agenda forward, if he wants to undo things that this government has done, and if he wants to try and get it through a Senate process that has now been almost completely appointed by Prime Minister Trudeau, we're going to see a couple of pretty big whacking omnibus bills because he has no other way to do it.
You may be right. The one caveat on that is that Pierre Poilievre knows government. He does not arrive in.
It's true. He's a creature of it. Yeah.
He will not arrive into government as a neophyte. He knows how it works. He was there. He understands. Past prime ministers had no executive experience prior. That's true of the current prime minister. It was true of Stephen Harper. It wasn't true of Jean Chrétien. So I think he will arrive there knowing the lay of the land. He would know Parliament better than most, and he would understand, how government operates. Now, he's going to have one heck of an agenda. I mean, there's going to be 50 things thrown at him on day one. So, will he be able to see through all of that and grasp the importance of doing away with the Omnibus Bill? I don't know. Time will tell.
Probably not. I mean, the other what we see on the state side, which is an option we don't have here really in the same way, is the executive order. I mean, Joe Biden did it. He came in on his first day of office 4 years ago and sat down and signed 50 or 60 and undid a bunch of Trump things. And I'm assuming Trump will do the same in January. But we don't have quite that mechanism.
No, but Pamela, I wouldn't advise that we give more power to the prime minister. I think prime ministers have enough. They don't have the waters, but they do govern from the center. They do, if they have a majority government, they do what they want. And so it's not because they lack power to do the right thing.
Right.
So giving them more powers, it would not be my cup of tea.
This is why you're so wise. You see, you've thought about all the outcomes of these things before. Okay, let's just spend another minute or two on this, on the actual. I know you've thought about this, on the right sizing of government. What about the issue of actually taking entire departments? We see the government on the energy front, for example, from my part of the world, but also in the East Coast as well, legislating in areas where it's either clearly provincial jurisdiction or it's shared and therefore questionable. Piece of legislation comes in, then we spend the next 5 years in a range of courts trying to solve who's in charge. How do we wrestle that?
Well, Pamela, go back to the point I made earlier. We have 300 federal organizations.
Yeah.
I repeat, 300.
Okay, that's not government departments. That's beyond that.
Yeah, sure. No. It includes government departments, include every organization. Some of them are very small. Some of them are extremely large. So how do you downsize? Look, I'm a student of economic development as well. And in 1986, Prime Minister Brian Mulroney asked me to write a report on the establishment of the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, which was established. There was a time when regional economic development was specific to certain areas. Today, every postal code in Canada has access to one of these agencies. Every postal code, Bay Street has access to the Regional Development Agency. We now have eight of them. What if we decided one day, look, I can tell you with certainty, Pam, that Moncton is booming at the moment. It's red hot.
Yeah.
It's the fastest growing metropolitan center in Canada at the moment. It wouldn't have been the case 40 years ago. So the question is, do we still need an agency like that? Halifax is absolutely booming. And so let's ask those questions. Do we need 8? Does Toronto really need a regional economic federal economic development agency? So there's a way to prune the federal government. You can eliminate, you were asking me, can we do it with some departments? Yes, we can. Absolutely.
Give me some for examples.
8 regional development agencies.
Yeah, so start there.
Let's start there.
Okay, what about a government department? I mean, we hear Trump saying things like, we're going to take the education department away because that's a state jurisdiction and we should stay the heck out of it.
Sure, there's a few, like the Department of Health in Ottawa could be downsized substantially because it's not federal jurisdiction. Ottawa playing a role in terms of universities, absolutely, but it requires a political judgment. When I say doing away with 8 regional agencies, that's one possibility. It may not work, but that's something that we should look at. I think some parts of Canada need special help, but not every postal code. So there's a way to, and so Department of Health. I think I would take a good look at Canadian Heritage. There's all kinds of departments that are in the field, are in jurisdiction that properly belong to the provinces. Yeah.
And also maybe just jurisdictions that they don't need to muck in, that Canadians can make decisions about what they want to watch on television or how they're going to discipline their children in terms of using the internet. Do we really need 4 or 5 pieces of legislation superimposed on what might be just a common sense decision?
Yes, but I would stress the point that for what Canadians want is much more efficiency in government operation. That's what they want. The government can do things, but there are so many things it doesn't do right. It doesn't belong there. And I think Canadians are starting to ask some pretty fundamental questions. And so I repeat what I said. What we saw in early November in the United States, it may well surface here.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you about the actual civil service itself, because I know you're a proponent and you do this out of love and respect, not because you're a person who doesn't believe that civil servants do their job. But there are a couple of issues. One, there's a belief that it has over the years become a politicized organization, that it used to be those objective outsiders that gave ministers or governments their best advice. Now it's, okay, we know what political stripe the boss is, we better just please him.
Yeah, 3 points here. First, the public service is terribly important. Second, I know public servants who work hard, who perform well, who earn their salary and then some. I know some, and perhaps there's not enough of them, but I do know a fair bit. Third, I think we'd be careful to paint a broad brush and say, look, all is not working. There are things working, and we need to protect that. And so that's how we should go forward. Look at what is working and keep it, and look at what's not working that we need fixing. Let's fix it.
Do you think government, and maybe this goes to the question of the higher salaries and the bonuses and all of that, can compete with the private sector in terms of attracting the best and the brightest? Because I know that used to be the argument. You could go and be, you go work for one of the banks in this country and be a multimillionaire. But working at the Department of Finance, you weren't going to get that rich.
No. Can we still attract the best and the brightest? I have some concerns, Pamela, some serious concerns. I mean, Sir Robin Butler told me, who was Secretary of the Cabinet in Great Britain, said, when I was a student, the place to go was in the public service. You could make a difference. Today, if you're a bright young economist, they say, why in the hell would you work in government? Go work for a consulting firm or a bank or something. That's where
they'll pay you.
And they'll pay you, and you'll be less frustrated. There's a point that I'd like to make that you raised a while ago, and I didn't respond properly, but I will do now. At the moment, ministers' offices have a staff of 25.
Yeah.
Now think about that, 25. 40 years ago, there was two or three.
Yeah.
Looked after making sure that the minister was there on time. Today, you have 25. You have a chief of staff that equals to an assistant deputy minister. You have director of policy. You have senior policy advisors. And so if you're in a government department working and beavering away, and you have a staff of 25 staring you down, asking for all kinds of briefing notes, having a policy influence that belongs to you, not to ministerial offices, then it's very frustrating. So can you attract the best and the brightest? The best and brightest may go, but after a couple of years, they look at that and say, "Look, that's not what I want to be. That's not where I want to go." I think, in terms of solution, we need to look at the size of ministerial offices. I don't think we need 25.
That's a really interesting point because we've got parallel structures, right? So everything that the public service is supposed to provide, the briefing notes, what does this really mean? Everybody talks about the whole Goldilocks approach. They always come in with one that's too hot, one that's too cold, and one that's just right. But now we have these political structures that supersede and override, in most cases, the public service.
Absolutely. And these 25 people, they tend to want to be busy.
Yeah.
They're ambitious, they get in the way. Sorry to put it like that, they do get in the way. And so if you're an assistant deputy minister looking after policy in Department X and you bring forward a policy proposal, you know there'll be 25 around the minister that will challenge it. And so, okay, what do you want? Let's sort it out. It wasn't like that. It was not like that. There was a day when an assistant deputy minister in policy in the government department in Ottawa mattered. When he brought things forward to his or her minister, it mattered. The minister took it seriously. It wasn't second guessed by 25 people looking at something from a different perspective than a departmental perspective. So I think one of the things that we need to look at is the size and role of ministerial offices.
Before I leave you, I just want to talk a little bit about how the world has changed, because of course I remember an old public sector as well, civil servants, people in the Foreign Affairs Department whose advice and wisdom was sought and respected, and it was a very different time. Now we're living with social media, 24-hour news systems. There was the phrase coined by David Plouffe, the Obama advisor who became the Harris advisor in this most recent campaign, who talked about stray voltage, that people pay attention to and engage with controversy, intentional controversy. And so politicians are always in pursuit of that, for their clip, for their moment in the sun, for them becoming the news of the day, or at least the news of the hour. That's just a reality now. And that's almost the antithesis of what the sober second thought of the public service or even the Senate of Canada should really be providing.
Yes. And I think social media has a lot to answer for. I have relatives, family, and friends. They come to me with these ideas that come out of nowhere. What the hell was that? Where did you get this? It's not in the Economist magazine or the Globe and Mail. Where did you get this stuff? Social media.
Yeah.
Not on social media. I think it's a lot of nonsense. But when they come to me with harebrained ideas and really serious, out of whack, the public service has to deal with that stuff. Politicians have to deal with that stuff. And so if you're going to have an outside process to look at the role of the public service, maybe we should look at the role of social media.
Yeah, because the politicians themselves are often the ones coming in with the wacky idea because they're trying to respond to their constituencies or something that they read online on the plane coming to Ottawa.
Yeah, and they think it's true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a serious problem, and it's another process that the federal public has to deal with. How to make sense out of that? Not easy.
So what now? What do you think? What do we? Do we just wait and see whether the same process unfolds in this country as we witnessed in the U.S., where it is really it's revolutionary?
Pamela, my sense of Canadians, and I don't say this lightly, and there's public opinion polls that support me on this. My sense is that Canadians know that there's a deep problem in Ottawa. They know that the public service is not delivering the goods that they pay for. They know that 60 plus billion, 15 billion in consultant fees, that we don't get the value that we expect to get value of. They know that Parliament is not working as it should. They know that. Canadians know that. And so we're playing with fire here. And so if Ottawa, if the federal government, if the federal public service doesn't want to see a wrecking ball coming at them, I think they need to establish a process, to explain to Canadians why the growth in the federal public service. Nobody understands that. No Canadians have been told, here's why it's grown so much. Here's why we need so many consultants. It's done by stealth. And Canadians, one thing I think, and you know this better than I because you talk to a lot of Canadians, Canadians are well aware. Don't underestimate what they know. And so they know that there's something wrong and they want it fixed. So it's either we're going to fix it properly or we're going to have a wrecking ball coming at them. It's the choice.
So it's there, it's coming at you. Get ready and try and do it. And if you try and manage it, you may be able to do it in a more intelligent, thoughtful way.
Yes, do it or it will be done to you.
Yeah.
That's the choice. I think another thing that we didn't talk about, Pamela, and we should have a bit more, the role of public sector unions.
Yeah, no, go ahead, and I'll give you a minute on that because these are, for example, this is exactly what the Canadians see. The unions saying, we will not go back to work. You can't make us go back to work. We will see you in court. And it seems bizarre, as you say, for all the Canadians who get up every day and go to work because they have to, because if they didn't show up at the workplace, they'd be fired.
Yeah, 78% of public sector workers belong to a union. 15% of private sector union belong to. So that tells you a lot. And so you can't dismiss people. If a federal public service is not performing, you can't fire a public. We know that. And so what do? They park them somewhere. But Canadians know that. And Canadians are really fed up with this. And so they're asking for answers. They're going to push. And so I repeat, public service, federal government, do something or something will be done to you. It is better. It's in your interest to do something.
And asking the unions to step up on that issue as well.
Well, good luck with that, Pamela.
Yeah. Donald Savoie, it is always so great to talk to you, and I've had the opportunity to do it on the air over the years, but also at dinner tables.
Right.
And it's just, we're so glad that there's somebody thinking this stuff through and writing it. This book, it's filled with yellow stickies, right? I've been making notes to myself. So speaking truth to Canadians about their public service, Donald Savoie. And I'm just very thankful that you're still working away at it every day.
Well, I'm very thankful that you had the time to have me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Right. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. And that is it for this edition of No Nonsense with Pamela Wallin. We'll see all of you very soon as well.